This is the St. Louis County Collaborative Budget Meeting. It's May 30th, and we're streaming on our website. So welcome, everyone. This is our final collaborative budget meeting. We've committed to an unprecedented, nearly year-long process to take a deep dive into the budget and look for sustainable solutions to our budget problem. This working group began meeting back in January and going through each department budget to understand priorities, challenges, and perhaps some funding sources to help us close the gap in the budget. Today we have a few short presentations from various departments, and then we're going to review a budget tool known as the Balancing Act. This budget tool will be available at the 4 town halls that will be scheduled last month. It's a simulation tool to encourage residents to interact in budgeting decisions to reduce or eliminate our budget deficit. The new tool offers some revenue options as well. Participation in this process helps the public better understand challenges of government budgets and provides a way for our residents to prioritize what's important to them when it comes to the level of services that county government provides. Details of these town halls will be shared a little bit later in the meeting. Let's move forward with our department presentations. Our first department is the Department of Public Health. Dr. Cunningham.
Yes. Perfect. All right. Thank you again for this opportunity to provide a short update from our last meeting. And so just want to remind everyone, the Public Health Department, our mission is to promote and protect the health of our communities. So that's one thing that we always try to make sure that we are promoting public health throughout, because it has a major impact on our communities as well as our individuals. So just briefly to recap our division summary, as you can see with our 2023 allocation of resources, about 44% of our budget goes towards clinical services. And so some of those things include not only our direct patient care in all 3 clinics, but also the services we deliver at corrections medicine as well. That does eat up a big portion of our budget. And so as a result, I am intentional about trying to do things to reduce the budget. For example, getting us to a FQHC lookalike status in which the health department will be able to receive additional federal funds for the care that we provide for our services. In addition, at corrections, also making sure that I can scale back on the number of contractors that we're using in order to promote DPH employees, because right now we are spending a lot on contracted services, and it's more so just a Band-Aid to meet the need right now. But I am intentional about making sure I can reduce the budget for our medical services. And then you can see the rest of our budget broken down. On the right side here is the list of our programs. One thing with DPH, majority of our programs are either federal, state mandated, or ordinance mandated by charter. We actually only have just very few programs that are not, for example, dental, but that is a key component to us continuing to provide care to the individuals in our community. So just want to highlight just some of our programs, and a lot of these are, again, mandated by federal, state, FAB accreditation, which is our public health accreditation. So a lot of our programs that we do have to make sure that we function and maintain, again, going back to meet our mission. Next slide. And then lastly, our revenue summary. Before I had presented just a general overview of our health fund and solid waste management fund. This is a high-level snapshot, but going back from 2019 up until now, that the Department of Public Health have been intentional about making sure that we are fiscally responsible. So we have been able to return a lot of our funds to the health fund. For example, last year we were able to return about 25% of our funds to the health fund. Additionally, we also rely on grants as well, and so grants help make up that additional part for us to continue to provide access to services for the community. A lot of our income is listed by some of the programs we see there, licensing. So for example, restaurant permits, tobacco retailers permits, any type of permits that come out of DPH, people need licenses from us. Intergovernmental, this is from the state actually pay us to make sure that we are providing essential public health functions. So we do receive funding from the state. Recording fees, this is vital records. We do receive income from fees related to birth certificates, death certificates, and things like that. And then health fees, that's our clinics, our correction system. So we also receive a significant amount of income, and I hope to be able to increase that amount of income again as we transition to our FQHC and also implement a more efficient EMR to help us capture those quality dollars that we need. And then lastly, all other that include rabies tax, some of our vector programs, we do receive some income from that as well. And then, of course, at the end, just listing our positions. Over time, we have deactivated some of our positions in order to save on our budget. So where we are today, after I reviewed it, I will say that it's a critical point to kind of maintain some of these positions because they are in critical areas. For example, corrections medicine, my clinics, dental services. So these are all medical services that that are critical to continue to meet the needs of the community. That was it. 2 to 3 minutes, I was told. Any questions for me?
Dr. Cunningham. Go to the Department of Human Services.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to update you on the budgetary matters for the Department of Human Services. As you can see, our adopted FY23 budget is $3.6 million. In the scheme of things for St. Louis County, it is a small amount of dollars, but very significant because it allows us to continue our mission to help those that are most in need in St. Louis County. Those dollars are allocated over administration, 24%, county youth, 22%, county older residents, approximately 22%, and all other, which makes up county veterans program, homeless services program, women and children's services, our Wyman shelter, equal 32%. We have consistently used our dollars from the general fund as a service agency. Our dollars are transferred to many of the needy community agencies throughout St. Louis County. Our staff and the majority of our dollars are supporting our staff, will allow them to monitor county funds, evaluate effectiveness of the programs, and on a consistent basis, meet with leaders throughout St. Louis County organizations to say, how can we help you improve your services to St. Louis County residents? Next slide, please. A revenue summary, again, $3.6 million. Program revenue is sporadic. Most of it is tied to our community development block grant program. If a project closes down, we are reimbursed for loan proceeds, that type thing. Authorized positions, as you can see on a consistent basis, we've been doing more with less. We're now budgeted in 2023 for 75 positions and FTEs 64. So that is my summary of our budget items. Take any questions you have.
How much of your revenue is grant funding?
I'd have to, all of this represents 1010 or general revenue funds. In terms of our grant funds, as you know, there is a significant component of HUD funding that we oversee, and I can bring you this out. And so
4 times what?
About 4 times general revenue, and that 13 million is on an average basis, but we have some funds that we carry for several years, so it may be higher than 13.
Right? Any other questions? Okay. Department of Revenue, Scott Lakin.
Thank you. It's good to be before you again. I was telling Danielle, who's in this picture, that her smile is going to get us a budget, I think. It's a good smile. Our budget is about 9.1 million. You take out of that the preservation fund, which is about 1.3, which we don't control. So you've got about a 7.8 billion net budget for the Department of Revenue. Our mission statement is quality customer service, and we collect revenue. We record deeds for mortgage and other types of services, and we also do licensing, both business and individual licensing. So basically, out of the 7.8 million budget that we control, we collect about $2.6 billion for the county, and most of that money is redistributed to different municipalities throughout the county, also school districts, public safety, Children's Services Fund, community colleges, and various nonprofits throughout the county. I always said that we collect about 20% of the revenue for the state of Missouri. Actually, it's up, I think, to 25% as of this morning. And so we're an economic engine for not only the county, but for the state. And we've got a lot going on at the Department of Revenue as far as software upgrades. And we're looking at reorganization to help even improve those numbers as well. That all. Take any question.
So you're collecting 25% of the state sales tax.
25% of the revenue for the state.
Technology. Bill Reese.
That'd be me.
Yes.
So our budget's about 11.2 million for the year. Our customers are both internal and external. A lot of the things we do kind of just happen. They happen behind the scenes with network connectivity, the distribution of PCs, desktop servers, software run. We also support the public-facing websites for the county, standardizations around that. Customer service is our main mission, and being able to make sure that we have everything current and up to date for protection of both the residents' information as well as the employee information. And also looking at opportunities where there's chances to offer automation to different departments and be able to offer efficiencies back to the county, and be able to potentially offer savings back to the county in the form of those automation opportunities. Slide. So we are not a revenue generating department. A lot of the things we do, however, allow for other departments to be able to generate revenue. So when we provide automation or customer service, or whether we're doing contract negotiations to be able to reduce the county's overall expenses, we are actively engaged in all of those things behind the scenes of that, but we do not generate actual revenue for our specific purposes. We do have 62 positions, and we are currently running at 60.5 for the FTEs. We have inactivated multiple positions this year to streamline our operations. It's again also looking inside to say, how do we make sure that we're operating the most effective way with the dollars that we've been given? So with that, any questions?
Okay. Transportation and public works.
So our budget for fiscal year 23 on the operating side is $108 million. But when you bump in our capital side on the transportation part of our department, that's about another $45 million. So we're in the neighborhood of actually being responsible for about $150 million. Majority of that of the transportation side is utilized in our transportation operations group. On the general fund side, it's predominantly in code enforcement and facilities management. So I have to reiterate that the funds do not, can't use general fund for transportation or vice versa. So we are kind of bifurcated in that way when you talk about fund sources. On the transportation side, we have 3,166 lane miles of road. When you speak in terms of centerline miles, and recall that centerline roads, when you're speaking to the center line of a road, roads are not just one lane in each direction. So when you really talk about the operations of a road, you have to look at actually how big it is. But in the context of centerline miles, we have 1,400 that we're responsible for. 900 of those are in subdivisions for which we get no federal or other grant support. And 10% of those are in poor to crumbling condition. So we have, needless to say, a funding issue on the transportation side. But we also have a funding issue on the public works side as well. We have 35 buildings that we're responsible for and 16 leases, about 3.2 million square feet. We only spend on average about $4 million a year to maintain all of that. And till recently, while we need about over $10 million to spend on capital work in our facilities, we have $1 million budgeted. So we are hurting. When you look at our budget, for our funding is spread over 7 divisions, and we collect income in various ways. Obviously, taxes support a lot of what we do, but we also take in fees through permits and inspections. Our sewer lateral and water service line repair programs have their own revenue source. We do apply for grants as often as we can for a variety of needs. Again, those permit fees that you get from Public Works Code Enforcement do not satisfy issues that we have on the transportation side and vice versa. So in either case, we're limited by that revenue. If we were to increase fees on the public works side, we'd only address the issues in code enforcement. Fees that we collect from permits on the public works side do not satisfy the facility issues that we have, nor do they address the nuisance abatement activity that we perform. The permits fees that we collect on the transportation side are insufficient to meet the needs that we have. We should be spending about $100 to $150 million a year addressing transportation issues, and we only spend about $45 million a year. So what I can say is kind of a summary is that what we do is supported by charter and ordinance. Nobody has ever said what we do is not important, but funding is woefully insufficient. Raising the fees that are within our permit to raise do not cover the needs that we have. Our assets are crumbling, and making the use of grant funds becomes difficult because we don't have enough local dollars to provide the match for the grants that we'd like to attain. And on top of that, while we have 724 full-time equivalent positions, we're 120 vacancies strong at this point, which means we're actually a organization because we don't have enough staff we're supposed to do. Sorry.
Questions? Annie?
Hello. So I'm the land use manager in the Department of Planning. Our main program that we do is the administration of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance for unincorporated St. Louis County, which is about a third of the land area and about a third of the population of St. Louis County. Our budget is about $970,000, and about 84% of that, 85% of that is our salary and fringe. So we're pretty lean in terms of our operating costs. And then our revenue, we're funded from the general fund. We do have review fees, but they do not generate revenue for the department. They are just the cost of providing those services. Our other main project that's ongoing that many of you know about is the comprehensive plan update, which isn't reflected in this budget, but is ongoing work.
Economic Development Partnership, Rodney Krim.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Rodney Krim, the CEO and President of the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. I'm joined by Netta Murphy, who's our CFO of the partnership. I want to give you just a quick background. The St. Louis Economic Development Partnership is the economic development organization that provides a list of comprehensive services to bring businesses here, to help them grow and retain and address their issues. This provides capital, investment, and employees for our region. In addition, we work on community investment projects. We put that under the umbrella of the St. Louis Promise Zone, working in our most distressed areas to bring economic opportunity to these areas. We support startups and the entrepreneurial communities. We have 4 incubators that we own and manage, taking ideas and providing an opportunity to bring them into economic success, providing jobs and opportunities. We also are attracting more foreign-born to our region through the St. Louis Mosaic Project, which is an opportunity to provide more employees to our businesses here in the St. Louis region. In addition to that, we have a World Trade Center, which focuses on providing opportunities for businesses internationally to do business here in St. Louis, and also businesses here to do business internationally. So we're focused on that as well. And there we're called on to do all kinds of economic development projects. And with that, those can range from helping with the flight to Germany, the first international flight in over 20 years. The chart here highlights our dollars. And so all of those dollars are kind of spread over those activities that I just talked about. The increase is basically needed to handle retaining employees, making sure we have good professional workers to accomplish the things I just mentioned. And so with that, that summarizes what we have to share with the group.
Questions for Rob? Okay, the next item on our agenda is our public budget tool, the Balancing Act. And I know Kyle and Elizabeth are very excited about this. So tell us about our new tool.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kyle Lamp. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations at the County Executive's Office. And Elizabeth Isley, our Deputy Chief of Communications. We're here today to walk you
Kyle.
through the town hall presentation that we're going to be giving.
Kyle, I can't really
and
hear
introduce
you.
Balancing Act to y'all. So, started.
I can't. Hey,
County
Kyle,
Executive.
can you hear me?
It looks like probably Dunaway is.
Oh,
I can't hear you. Can anybody hear me? I can see Paul shaking his head, but can you hear me now?
IT help. This one. Councilwoman Dunaway, can you hear us?
I can hear you sometimes. I just can't hear Kyle.
Okay, so can we move that?
Yeah.
Is that better for you, Councilwoman?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Glad you said that at the top and not at the halfway through. Thanks, Alex. All right, so the budget process. The county executive is responsible for preparing a budget for county operations to the county council. From there, county council is responsible for passing a budget to be signed into ordinance by the county executive. County executive, through county departments like transportation, public health, and the police department, is then tasked with providing services as funded through that approved budget. October 1st is the deadline for the county executive to submit his or her budget to the council, and then council is responsible for holding hearings with departments to discuss that proposed budget. The county's fiscal year is January through December, so council must approve a budget no later than December the 31st. How's our county funded? So today's exercise is focused on our county's general operating funds, which is where over 90% of county staff are funded and where most of the county services are funded through. Other funding sources, which aren't included, include things like the Children's Service Fund, the Emergency Operations Center, and Bi-State. All of those funds are locked towards specific purposes. For example, we can't use Bi-State funding to pay for vaccinations at the Department of Public Health. And as you can see from this chart, the majority of our revenue comes from sales and property tax. You can see a further breakdown on the left in dollar amounts, which add up to our total of nearly $500 million. And that tiny sliver in the top left, which doesn't get a percentage, is this contribution from our casino taxes, around 2%.
So where do those funds go? The county's general operating funds allocate more than $537 million to support government services to the more than 1 million people who call St. Louis County home. And as you can see in this chart, most of that money is invested in public safety. And on this next slide, we're going to walk through what each of these categories represents. So we'll start in the top left, that is economic development and infrastructure funds, which fund road projects, the Department of Planning, and recruiting and retaining businesses. Public health and human services fund the functions of the public health department, including restaurant expenses or inspections, medical examiner's office, environmental services, birth and death records. St. Louis County has the only public health department to offer clinical services in the state of Missouri. Public safety funds the police department, the jail, the prosecuting attorney's office, and courts, and again is where 44% of the county's budget is invested. Parks and recreation includes the maintenance of the county's 73 parks and the hundreds of programs residents and visitors enjoy at them, like Lone Elk Park and Winter Wonderland and Tillis Park. Last year, more than 2 million visitors enjoyed parks programming like this Halloween event at the North County Recreation Complex. General government funds departments like administration and revenue that collect taxes and issue property deeds and marriage licenses. It also includes the county executive, county council, and the board of elections. And in 2023, we've moved out one-time projects, and those are funds that address projects like the demolition of Jamestown Mall and the building of a new Central County Police Precinct.
St. Louis County has an operating deficit of around $43.8 million. This means that over the course of 1 year, the county anticipates it will spend $43.8 million more than it receives in revenue. It's important to note St. Louis County does have around $244 million in our fund balance, but without taking action to correct this deficit, St. Louis County will continue to deplete those funds. An analogy to maybe your household budget, let's say you make $50,000 in 1 year, but a combination of maybe some medical expenses or an accident, you spend $60,000 in 1 year. In that example, you can only continue to do those sort of expenses when you have $10,000 in your savings account. In St. Louis County, we can no longer continue to spend against our reserves because we continue to deplete that fund balance. And to illustrate that point a bit further, you can see here in about the past 15 years, the balances in our general revenue fund. As you can see, expenditures continue to outpace revenues. Our red line represents our expenditures, which is on an upward trajectory as our revenues continue to remain stagnant. Our fund balance there in the green line at the bottom shows that amount that we have remaining in the balance. And you can see those large increases in 2021 and 2022. And those were due to the infusion of federal dollars in response to the pandemic through CARES and ARPA funds. And finally, that purple line at the bottom, that is our fund balance target. And that simply is a calculation of 10% of our revenues in 1 year. So that number stays relatively consistent. And that is a number that we do not want to go below, that 10% of that revenue. There has been some good news. As I referenced earlier, the majority of our funding comes from sales and property tax. And revenues from sales taxes have rebounded from pandemic lows. They've also historically been helped by passing a couple of sales taxes, which were approved by voters. In 2013, the Arch River sales tax, which went towards Great Rivers Greenway, the Arch renovations, and city and county parks. 2017, our Prop P sales tax, which is used for public safety enhancements. And most recently in 2023, Proposition M, which was passed by voters, which is a use tax for cannabis products. Important to note though, so while we haven't received increases from these funds, things like Prop P and the Arch River sales tax, those funds must stay towards those specific purposes. So we've described our deficit, and you can see it in pretty stark details in the previous slides, but how did we get here? The problem we face is due to many factors which have not been structurally addressed in decades. Minimal population growth. In 1970, the county's population was around 950,000. In the most recent census in 2020, our population had still only increased by 5.5% to just over 1 million people. This lack of population has ensured that our tax base hasn't grown. Despite that relatively flat amount of population growth, infrastructure needs have increased because more of our population has spread farther out into the county. Because houses, roads, and other infrastructure have spread farther out, the costs associated with maintaining those services have increased. And finally, no increase in tax revenues. The property tax rate for St. Louis County has not increased since 1984.
And so while the amount of property tax may increase on a property, a state law change in 2009, as illustrated on this graph, requires that when property value increases, the tax rate must decrease. So 2023 is a reassessment year, and when assessed values in the county increase during a reassessment cycle, the county must lower its tax rate so that we do not receive additional revenue as a result of reassessment. So now that you have all this information, you might be asking, if that's true, then why do my taxes keep going up? Well, that's because St. Louis County is responsible for collecting tax revenue for all taxing jurisdictions, including school districts, community college, fire districts, and municipalities. So when voters in those areas approve propositions for a school district, for a fire district, then your taxes go up. So here's where we're going to take a look at an example of a property tax receipt for a home worth $250,000. So these town halls, we will do them in those areas. So this example is in Kirkwood. So we highlight the portion of this bill that goes to St. Louis County. That is the county general, the county health fund, county park maintenance, county bond retiree, and muni road and bridges. So in just a second here, you'll see the video split between what goes to fund county government services and what funds other taxing districts. And you'll see that 6% of this bill goes to fix roads and potholes, maintain parks, and provide public health services.
So as I referenced earlier, county population has increased by fewer than 50,000 residents in the last 50 years. But at that same time, tens of thousands of acres of land have been developed as folks have spread farther out across the county to live. And since 1970, the county's maintained roads have increased by 30% while our population has remained relatively stagnant. That low density expansion leads to overall higher costs for local government because services must be provided to essentially the same number of residents, but at an increased distance apart. This increased distance means that police, snow plows, and all other services from the county must be expanded and maintained at a higher cost per resident without an increase in the tax base. And the transportation, stormwater, electrical, and water networks must also expand and be maintained at that increased cost per resident. You'll see on the left is a bit of a graphic which shows where our population has increased in different years. And it's pretty clear that as the population goes farther out into our county, it's having an impact on our expenses without an increase in our revenues, to have a callback from our earlier slide.
So previous administrations have taken some action to keep government afloat over the past decade, which has included some new revenue, like the gaming and admission revenue from the opening of River City Casino in 2009. However, other actions have crippled the county's operational capacity, as you can see by the number of pay freezes for all employees throughout. And I know that pay freezes for employees might not sound like too big of an issue because who hasn't had to deal with a year or two with no raise. However, county employee salaries have fallen behind the market, which has resulted in high-performing employees leaving, loss of institutional knowledge, and requires us to contract out many services which we were previously able to do internally, like engineering services to plan out transportation needs, food services at the jail, IT work to make government services more efficient, and road repair work. Often these contracted services come at a cost nearly double what we would have been able to do internally. So at this point, this is where we would stop and walk folks through the Balancing Act budget tool and ask if anybody has any questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Page to announce our town hall date.
Well, we do have 4 town halls planned, where we'll talk about not only this balancing act. Pass the microphone down here so you can hear me. Our 4 town halls are planned on June 8th, Florissant Valley Library. These are all at 6:30 p.m. And they will all be on Thursday except for June 27th. And that is an early council meeting day, so it won't conflict with the 3 o'clock council meeting. So Thursday, June 8th at the Flo Valley Library. June 14th, a Wednesday, I'm sorry, that's a Wednesday, not a Thursday, at the DePere Lodge, Wednesday, June 14th, 6:30. Tuesday, June 27th, Oak Bend Library at 6:30. And Thursday, June 29th, at Grants View Library. And we will be taking questions from the public, but we will also unveil our budget tool, and we'll give people a chance to use that tool and in this setting, but also we'll hopefully it will spread across the county and we'll get more people participating. Thank you, Elizabeth.
So at this point in our town halls, we will introduce the question of why we're coming to the public and why we want to engage them using this balancing act tool. So as a result of these meetings, the county executive and the county council, they've come together to host these collaborative budget meetings to assess the state of the budget and the services and revenues of St. Louis County. As your local government, the #1 priority for us is to be responsive to the people that we serve, and the county council and the county executive are now asking for your feedback by asking you to participate in this budget simulation. This tool allows you to participate in the budget process and tell us what services you want government to continue to provide or which ones you're willing to see cut. We want to build a two-way relationship based on the facts of how the county government serves its residents, while also taking into account the demand for services as well as legal and financial constraints. We hope that by engaging the public in this process, the elected officials that run county government will better be able to understand what the public values in their local government. So our balancing act tool helps the county government be more transparent with our communities. It allows us to share the most important information, not just a data dump, provide layers of context, allowing users to get more information as they need to make their decisions. Let residents see the information that we use to make our budget decisions, and connect our budget with the level of service and policy options that same options that our leaders get to make.
So if you'd like, you've got your phone handy. You can scan that QR code and be taken to Balancing Act. So you get a look at it on the mobile device, but we'll also pull it up here on the screen. I was going to pull it up. We have a lovely introduction from the county executive here. We'll skip it for now.
And add this to your home screen. So share it with your friends, so push it out to all your contacts, and see if we can folks digging into our budget a little bit.
So to walk you through this a little bit, you'll see at the top the red bar that talks about where we are. That's that number we talked about with the deficit. And the breakdown here where the money goes. So on the right, you'll see spending, and that is where folks can go through and either increase services or decrease services. And again, within those categories we talked about earlier, you will be prompted on what those changes will mean to those, and really give you another little description of what those departments do and those divisions. So if you go down on the left side, you see the revenues. So Kyle, if you click on tax revenue and you click on sales tax, that will give you a prompt that says that a change to this would require going to the Missouri legislature. So it will keep people from doing things that take some more time, but once you go through that prompt, you can do it. Same with the property tax rate. It will give you that option, and that it will tell you if you increase or decrease that. So Kyle, if you click make a change, it will show you on the upper right hand side the impact on the average house. So you also get that view. And then as you scroll further down, there are other options for revenue. You could say you are interested in an online sales tax, which would take a vote of the people. And you can see that scroll across the top did move as Kyle clicked yes. And then if anybody is interested, you can put all of the NFL settlement in there. But if you do that, it will warn you that this is a one-time source of revenue. So you can play around with that, and this is where we will take time during the town hall to give people that option. But that toggle will show you where you are, if you're still in a deficit, or if you're gonna make Mel cry over.
I'm not, don't lead anything into it. We're just playing around. Everyone gets a fair warning.
Did IT build this? Or was this an internal? Very cool.
Yes,
So yeah, so when we're doing this in public, we'll have staff at the event that are walking around. And as you saw, many of these are at libraries, so we'll have a computer lab that people can join. We're gonna have QR codes that are handed out as people walk in. They can also submit their questions during the town hall. That the idea is that by giving this presentation, they'll have the context to make these decisions better. And we're having that Q&A session so that if there's any specific questions that a resident is very passionate about, we'll be there to answer them and encourage everyone to, participate in this simulation, because we really do care about, the public's input here. And, when we worked through this tool, the Balancing Act, they worked with other communities. We asked them, what kind of response did we get? And they said, we should expect around 4,000 responses to this if we're, pretty serious about our outreach. So that's our goal. But, there's 1,004,000 people in this county. So we should get 1,004,000 submissions, but babies don't have cell phones. Anyway, so yeah, we're happy to take anyone's questions about the tool. One other thing to note is each one of these individual town halls has its own individual meeting. So we'll get real-time data from that meeting that we can present to the group of people that will stay long enough. So we can show them this group of 30, 50, 100 people. These are the decisions that you made on how you think the budget should exist. And at the end, once we're done collecting from the broader public, those responses will be incorporated into even just people who found it on social media or through an email blast or whatever. So thank you. We're very excited.
we are. And I'll try to move this back to the middle of the table.
Mel, Barrett and me is totally geeked out about this. Right? And I was saying with Mr. Scott, like he said, we were just talking and I was saying, does this make this easier or harder? And I said, it makes it a little more complicated, right? But just like when we went through the ARPA process, right? That was the foundation of doing something like this. We needed that engagement because we're trying to make real hard decisions here. We're not, and we want to be transparent. And what's more transparent than you figure it out? You tell us how easy it is to do this. But in all seriousness, it's definitely allowing the public to say, hey, we're taking this serious and we're being transparent and we're putting everything before you so you can make informed decisions. The same things that we're going to have to do. And so please engage with us. So I want to thank everybody, Dr. Page's office, the departments, and Mr. Paul. Can you hear me, Mr. Paul Filer? Because I know time to put this together and all of the under the hood stuff you had to do and all of the team members. So thank you all so much. Thank you all for valuing our community's voice. And then for us as leaders on the county and the executive office to take their information, to take their information and move the needle. Because I always say we don't have time for checkbox. We have to do something that moves the needle. And this county needs to do transformational things. And so thank you all. I'm excited.
Okay. Any questions for the public? Questions for the public? Anyone else have anything they'd like to add or any questions for anyone seated at the table? We're all fair game today. Okay, well, this is a nice way to end almost 6 months of work with our budget review committee. So we will pause on our milestone meetings and we'll off town halls on the previously projected dates. And we look forward to engaging the community with our tools. We encourage you to share them widely among your friends on Facebook and other social media. and we'll get lots of feedback and lots of ideas on how we can make our budget more efficient. Thank you all for coming out today.
Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna play with it right now.
As well. Great choice in shoes.